Fellow gardeners, let me share something with you. When I built my first raised bed 5 years ago, I thought I had it all figured out. After all, how hard could it be? Throw together some boards, fill it with dirt, plant some seeds, and watch the magic happen, right? Well, that first season was a humbling wake-up call. My tomatoes looked like they were slowly dying of thirst despite daily watering. My lettuce bolted faster than a startled rabbit, and don't even get me started on the great drainage disaster that turned my beautiful raised bed into a swamp after the first heavy rain. But here's the thing about gardening. Every mistake is a teacher in disguise. Those early failures taught me lessons that transformed my raised bed gardens from struggling survivors into thriving ecosystems. Today, I want to share the 9 most common mistakes I see beginner raised bed gardeners make, along with the hard-won wisdom that will help you avoid these pitfalls entirely. The most heartbreaking mistake I witness is gardeners building raised beds that are only 6 to 8 inches deep. I get it. Materials cost money, and shallow seems easier. But this single decision will haunt your entire growing season. Most vegetables need 12 to 18 inches of soil depth to develop proper root systems. Tomatoes, peppers, and root vegetables like carrots need even more. When you shortchange depth, you're essentially forcing your plants to live in cramped apartments when they need sprawling houses. I learned this lesson the hard way when my first shallow beds produced stunted plants that never reached their potential. The roots hit the bottom barrier and began circling, creating root-bound plants that struggled to uptake nutrients and water efficiently. My recommendation? Build beds at least 12 inches deep, and if you're growing deep-rooted crops, go for 18 to 24 inches. Your plants will thank you with robust growth and abundant harvests. Here's where I see even experienced gardeners stumble, thinking that any bagged garden soil will create the perfect growing medium. I once filled an entire 4x8 bed with cheap topsoil from a big box store, only to watch my plants struggle in what essentially became concrete after the first few waterings. The secret to raised bed success lies in creating a soil blend that balances drainage, nutrition, and structure. My go-to formula has evolved over years of experimentation: 1/3 quality compost, 1/3 coconut coir or peat moss, and 1/3 vermiculite or perlite. This combination provides the drainage that prevents waterlogged roots while retaining enough moisture to keep plants happy during dry spells. Don't be tempted to use regular garden soil or worse yet, filled dirt. These compact over time, creating the exact drainage problems you're trying to avoid with raised beds. Invest in quality ingredients up front. Your soil is the foundation of everything that follows. Location mistakes are among the most permanent and devastating errors in raised bed gardening. I once helped a neighbor figure out why her raised beds were producing lackluster results despite perfect soil and careful attention. The culprit? She'd positioned her beds in a spot that received morning sun but was shaded by a large oak tree for most of the afternoon. Most vegetables are sun worshippers that need 6 to 8 hours of direct sunlight daily. Before you build, spend a full day observing your potential site. Note when shadows fall and where they come from. Trees, buildings, fences, even other garden structures can create shade patterns that change throughout the growing season as the sun's path shifts. I always recommend choosing the sunniest spot available, even if it means adjusting other landscape plans. You can always add shade cloth if needed, but you can't easily add more sun to a poorly positioned bed. Square foot gardening popularized the idea of intensive planting, but I've watched countless beginners take this concept way too far, cramming plants together like sardines in a can. The result? Well, plants end up competing for resources. There's poor air circulation, which leads to disease problems, and honestly, harvests that disappoint despite the initial promise of abundance. Each plant really needs its own space to access sunlight, nutrients, and good air circulation. When I see beginners planting lettuce every 4 inches instead of the recommended 6 to 8 inches or squeezing tomato plants into spaces meant for bush beans, I just know they're setting themselves up for problems. The solution isn't just following spacing guidelines, it's about understanding why they exist in the first place. Proper spacing prevents competition, reduces disease pressure, and actually increases your overall harvest by letting each plant reach its full potential. Sometimes less really is more in the garden. Nothing, and I mean nothing, breaks a gardener's heart quite like watching carefully tended plants develop root rot because water sits in the bed after every rain. I learned this lesson the hard way during my second year when I built a beautiful raised bed in a low spot of my yard, thinking the extra height would solve any drainage issues. After the first major storm, I discovered that raised beds aren't magic, they still need proper drainage underneath. Water pooled at the bottom of my beds, creating anaerobic conditions that killed beneficial soil microbes and rotted plant roots from the bottom up. The fix involves two crucial steps. First, make sure your bed location has natural drainage or, create it with proper grading. Second, add a drainage layer at the bottom of your bed using coarse materials like small rocks or broken pottery pieces. Some gardeners skip this step, but I found it makes the difference between thriving plants and disappointing harvests, especially in areas with clay soil or poor natural drainage. Watering seems straightforward until you realize that raised beds have completely different moisture dynamics than in-ground gardens. The elevated position and improved drainage that make raised beds so attractive also mean they dry out much faster than traditional garden beds. I used to water my raised beds the same way I watered my in-ground plants, a quick sprinkle every day or two. This surface watering created shallow root systems and plants that panicked at the first sign of heat stress. The breakthrough came when I learned about deep, less frequent watering that encourages roots to grow down into the soil rather than staying near the surface. Now I water thoroughly 2 to 3 times per week, soaking the soil to at least 6 inches deep. I check moisture levels by sticking my finger deep into the soil. If it's dry past the first inch, it's time to water. This approach creates resilient plants with deep root systems that can handle temporary drought and, honestly, uptake nutrients way more effectively. The materials you choose for building your raised beds will determine how long they last and whether they contribute to or detract from plant health. I've seen gardeners use treated lumber without researching the chemicals involved, only to worry later about contamination. Others choose beautiful but inappropriate materials that look great initially, but fail within a season or two. Cedar and redwood remain the gold standard for raised bed construction because they naturally resist rot and insects without chemical treatments. If budget is a concern, untreated pine or fir can work for 3 to 5 years before needing replacement. Avoid treated lumber unless you're certain it uses newer, safer treatments, and even then, line the interior with plastic if you're growing edibles. For those wanting longer-lasting options, composite materials, stone, or concrete blocks create durable beds that can last decades. The key is matching your material choice to your budget, timeline, and aesthetic preferences while keeping plant health as the primary consideration. One of the most subtle but impactful mistakes I see is gardeners who plan their raised beds only for their current season's goals without considering year-round functionality. I made this mistake myself, positioning beds perfectly for summer vegetables, but creating winter access problems when paths became muddy and beds were difficult to maintain. Successful raised bed gardens require four-season thinking. Consider how you'll access beds during wet weather. Will you need stepping stones or defined pathways? Think about winter protection. Can you easily install row covers or cold frames? Plan for succession planting by ensuring you have space to start new crops while others are finishing. I now design my raised bed areas with permanent pathways, convenient tool storage, and easy hose access. These details seem minor during the excitement of spring planning, but they make the difference between a garden you enjoy tending and one that becomes a chore. Perhaps the most challenging mistake to address is the expectation that raised beds will immediately solve all gardening problems and produce magazine-worthy results in the first season. Social media doesn't help here. We see beautiful, established gardens and expect our new beds to look the same right away. The truth is that even the best-built raised bed needs time to develop its ecosystem. Soil biology takes months to establish, plants need time to adapt to their new environment, and you need time to understand how your specific beds respond to weather, watering, and seasonal changes. I encourage new raised bed gardeners to think of their first year as a learning season. Take notes about what works and what doesn't. Observe how quickly beds dry out, which areas get the most sun, and how different plants perform in your specific conditions. This information becomes invaluable for making improvements and adjustments in subsequent seasons. Building successful raised bed gardens isn't about avoiding all mistakes. It's about learning from the right ones and setting yourself up for long-term success. Every experienced gardener has a collection of failures that taught them valuable lessons, and these 9 mistakes represent the most common stumbling blocks I've observed over years of helping fellow gardeners. Remember, gardening is a journey of continuous learning and improvement. Each season brings new challenges and opportunities to refine your approach. The key is starting with solid fundamentals: proper depth, quality soil, good drainage, appropriate spacing, and realistic expectations, then building your skills and knowledge from there. Your raised bed garden has the potential to become a source of fresh food, beautiful flowers, and deep satisfaction for years to come. By avoiding these common mistakes, you're giving yourself the best possible foundation for that success. If this article helped you avoid a costly mistake or gave you insights for improving your raised bed gardens, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to Soilsage Chronicles for more practical gardening wisdom, and share this article with fellow gardeners who might benefit from these hard-won lessons. Together, we can help more gardeners create the thriving raised bed gardens of their dreams.